The regressed S-rank hunter decided to destroy the guild. The light on the return device went out. Dojin gripped the handle again with his bloodied hand. Nothing happened. The blue ring had stopped as well. Overhead, the gate's ceiling was splitting apart. Red mana poured through the black fissures. The floor shook without pause, and the sound of monsters surging down the corridor grew louder. The deepest reaches of the double gate. Dojin was the only one left. Say ah. Dojin pressed his communicator. The return device stopped. Open it again from outside. Only static answered. He breathed in short, ragged gasps as he pressed a hand to his side. Blood seeped between his fingers. A moment later, a familiar voice came through. I'm sorry. It was Saya. Dojin's hand went still. For what? If we open the passage again, the collapse will spread outside. We have to close it now if we want to save the other 6. So you're leaving me behind? No answer came right away. That brief silence was enough. Saya had been the last of his teammates to leave. When his second-in-command said she would check the return device, Dojin had trusted her to watch his back. This was the result. Raid concluded. This time, a man's voice cut into the channel. He was the guild's operations director. As of this moment, the return of 6 survivors has been confirmed. The interior collapse has begun. There will be no further rescue attempt. Dojin gave a low laugh. Every chuckle sent pain through his torn side. You mean you're not retrieving the raid leader? You don't sound well. Thanks to you. We know you did everything you could in the field. It sounded like something said to a man who was already dead. Dojin did not answer. He lowered himself onto one knee before the return device. When he gathered mana in his palm, the traces left on the dormant device began to reveal themselves. Mana left traces even after it was used. Where it had begun, which direction it had traveled, what it had collided with, and if multiple traces overlapped, which one had been left first. Dojin could read those traces, and if the force was still in motion, he could reverse its direction. That was the power that had carried Dojin all the way to S-rank. The force that had stopped the device had not originated inside. A thin strand of mana had entered from outside the gate and severed the device's center with perfect precision. It was not a malfunction. It was an external shutdown command. Dojin followed the trace. Beneath the shutdown command lay another overlapping mark. When the guild approved a death report, an administrator's signature was left on the return device. It was a trace that should only have been imprinted after a death during a mission had been confirmed. The return device also retained the trace from when it had opened the way for the party to enter. The order of the 3 traces was clear. The administrator's signature had come first. The entry function had been activated next. The shutdown command that had just arrived was last. Dojin's death report had been approved before he even entered the gate. His gaze turned cold. When did you prepare my death report? What are you talking about? The other end of the channel fell silent. It was already approved before I went in. Instead of an answer, a brief burst of static came through. It sounded as though someone was trying to cut the connection. Dojin tightened his grip. Saya, did you know too? Saya's voice trembled, but no other words followed. Boom. The corridor wall burst apart. 3 masses of red mana shot toward Dojin. He twisted aside and thrust out his right hand. Go back. The incoming mana faltered in midair. Then it reversed direction and flew back through the ruined wall. An explosion thundered, and several monsters collapsed. Blood vessels burst along Dojin's right arm. All feeling vanished from his fingertips. Gritting his teeth, he forced himself upright. His power could not change what had already happened. It could not heal the wound in his side. It could not bring back his dead teammates. And the shutdown command sent to the device had already finished executing. All he could send back was mana that was still in motion. Another attack came flying at him. Dojin reversed it again. The attack exploded in the middle of the horde. The recoil slammed into his chest. His heart stopped for an instant, then began pounding violently. Ha! Black blood poured from his mouth. A crack formed in the awakened core inside his chest, the organ through which a hunter produced and stored mana. If he used his ability again, it might shatter. Even so, the monsters did not diminish. At the heart of the gate, the core pulsed. Every time red light spread from it, the ceiling and floor collapsed together. If he left it alone, even the 6 who had escaped outside would not be safe. Dojin picked up his sword. Betrayed or not, he still had a job to do. That only made him angrier. He staggered into a run toward the core. A monster's claws raked his shoulder. He reached out and sent back a mana bolt fired from behind him. The recoil blinded his left eye. One step. Then another. At last, he reached the core. Countless mana traces were tangled across its surface. One of them was identical to Dojin's mana. A slender trace extended from the core into his body. The instant Dojin drove his sword in, a blue line appeared along the inside of his wrist. The line climbed his arm and connected to the core. Then scenes flashed before his eyes. The day he first signed the guild contract. The moment his leg broke during his first raid. The night his ability evolved and granted him a new skill. The moment he was declared S-rank and everyone applauded. The deaths of his teammates. His own injuries. The missions he had taken and the choices he had made. In every scene, the blue line on his wrist appeared for an instant. Each time, some of the power he used and the sensations he felt drained away along it. This connection had not formed for the first time today. Everything, from the day he joined the guild to his injuries, the growth of his ability, and his missions, had been collected inside the core. He did not know who had collected it. He could only suspect that his high position and dangerous missions had been given to him for the sake of gathering those records. You've been recording my life this whole time. Just before the connection cut out, the man's voice came faintly through the communicator. With this record, we can correct the discrepancy from 2 years ago. ago. What does that mean? There was no answer. The connection went dead. The core convulsed. All the mana stored inside it was about to erupt at once. Dojin released his sword and seized the core with both hands. If he reversed this force, he could stop the collapse from spreading outside. But he would not survive it. There was no choice to make. Dojin drew out every last drop of mana he had. The red current spreading from the core stopped. Hundreds of streams of mana trembled as they collided with one another. One by one, Dojin turned them back toward their points of origin. All feeling vanished from his arms. The awakened core inside his chest shattered. His vision went dark. One last time, he looked at the blue line on his wrist. It did not disappear. Instead, it grew clearer the closer he came to death. The guild had abandoned him in his final moments. And perhaps they had been exploiting his life for far longer than that. Why him? What were they trying to correct? He still did not know. But there was one thing he could decide. If he ever got another chance, he would not die without learning the reason for their betrayal. He would enter the guild and find the original death record first. He would learn whether there were others marked to be discarded like him, and who had prepared this order. Then, after gathering the evidence, he would bring the guild down from within. No matter what. The core shattered. Dojin's heart stopped as well. At that moment, the blue line wrapped around his body. Every sensation that remained until the instant before his death was drawn along the line and sucked away somewhere. A voice came through the darkness. Wake up. Dojin opened his eyes. His cheek rested against rough ground. The sharp stench of blood and the smell of wet earth filled his nose. Someone was shaking him by the shoulder. Answer me if you're alive. Can you hear me? Dojin reached out and pushed the person's arm away. There was no strength in him. He tried to sit up at once, only to brace himself against the ground again. His body felt unnaturally light. His familiar scars were gone. The hole that had been torn through his side moments ago had vanished as well. But he could barely sense any of the mana that had once filled his body. Dojin raised his head. Low-rank monsters lay dead around him. Candidates with tense faces supported one another. Near the exit, examiners were counting the survivors. He knew this place. It was the gate where he had first awakened. 2 years ago. This can't be. Dojin looked down at his hands. They had fewer calluses. The old scar that had marked the back of his hand was gone. His memories from before his death were clear. Sea's apology. The death signature entered in advance. That man's voice. The shattered core. Near the exit, an examiner was channeling mana into the device used to close the gate. A thin beam of light flowed steadily from the examiner's hand into the device. Dojin raised a trembling hand toward the light. Reverse. The beam did not so much as waver. It continued flowing into the device. Even though the force was still in motion, he could not reverse its direction. His current body did not contain enough mana. A moment later, the light cut off. When Dojin focused on the lingering trace, he saw something else. The point where the mana had originated. The direction it had flowed toward the device. The order in which it had grazed the stones on the floor along the way. He could not reverse the force, but he could read the path it had traveled. Trajectory reading. Compared to the ability he had possessed at his peak, it was pitiful. Candidate, come this way. At the examiner's call, Dojin slowly stood. When he placed his hand on the portable appraisal device, a dim light flickered on. A moment later, letters appeared. E rank. Quiet sighs sounded around him. Some people openly lost interest. Dojin looked at his wrist before he looked at the appraisal sheet. A slender blue line had appeared beneath his skin. It was the same one he had seen just before his death. The moment he tried to cover it with his hand, the line vanished. His mind briefly grew hazy as well. He tried to remember whom he had met after completing his first raid, but he could not call one of the faces to mind. He was no longer sure whether a date he had known with certainty only moments ago was even correct. His memories were not intact. Dojin suppressed his unease. There was someone he needed to find first. His gaze swept over the line of candidates, then stopped. Hair tied back short. A blood-stained combat uniform. Hands wrapping a bandage around another candidate's arm. It was Saya. She saw Dojin too. When their eyes met, she tilted her head as if looking at a stranger. Of course she did. The Saya of this time did not know him. She had not closed his route home yet. She had not abandoned him yet. But their final conversation remained perfectly preserved in Dojin's mind. I'm sorry. Those two words alone refused to fade. E-rank, I see. Dojin's body stiffened at the voice beside him. He slowly turned. Standing there was Guan Tizong, the man who had pronounced his death moments ago. His face was younger than Dojin remembered. Dressed in a suit, he glanced once at Dojin's appraisal sheet and held out a document without any particular expression. Chonggun finds a use even for worthless abilities. It was a contract that would bind his entire first year as an awakened hunter to the guild. In his previous life, Dojin had believed those words meant an opportunity. Not this time. Dojin met the man's eyes. He could not tell whether Guan Tizong already knew everything that was going to happen. He could not even be certain whether the man remembered him. He could not kill him yet. First, he had to discover why Chonggun had recorded his life and what had caused his regression. Dojin accepted the contract. For the first time, a flicker of interest appeared in the man's eyes. Now it was time to enter Chonggun and find the original death record, along with the true nature of the blue line that had tracked him. Standing before the man who had killed him, Dojin decided to play the part of an ignorant E-rank rookie.